The world runs on algorithms. We navigate it with Alborithm.
We think about the architecture of the modern global economy, we usually point to the internet, commercial jet travel, or complex free trade agreements. But the actual foundation of global trade is entirely physical. It is a standard, corrugated steel box. It is an exceptionally simple invention, which raises a strange historical question. Why did it take until the late 1950s for anyone to actually use it? Before this box existed, the global economy was physically trapped by its own shores. Consider a typical cargo run from 1954. The SS Warrior left New York Harbor bound for Bremerhaven, Germany. It operated under a system called break bulk shipping. Inside its hull were exactly 194,582 separate items, divided into 1,156 individual shipments. Every single bag of sugar, wooden crate, and metal barrel had to be loaded by hand. Men used steel hooks and slings to hoist the cargo, then manually shoved and packed each irregular piece into the ship's hold so it wouldn't shift at sea. The labor was brutally dangerous. In the port of New York alone, an average of 6 longshoremen suffered serious injuries or were killed every single day. It took the crew of the Warrior 10 full days just to load the ship. That is the exact same amount of time the vessel spent crossing the Atlantic Ocean. Because of this labor-intensive process, moving cargo cost the modern equivalent of $420 per ton. Early mechanical interventions couldn't fix the problem. Even with forklifts shuttling goods along the dock, workers still had to maneuver individual bales and pallets into the cramped lower decks piece by piece. The absolute limit on trade wasn't the capacity of the ships, it was the pier itself, which constantly bottlenecked under the weight of disorganized, fragmented cargo waiting to be handled. As long as international trade relied on hand loading, mass globalization was mathematically and economically impossible. Malcolm McLean had no experience in maritime shipping. He was a trucking entrepreneur, and looking at the docks, he saw a massive systems failure. His solution was remarkably straightforward. Instead of unpacking a truck at the pier, simply detach the entire trailer box and lift it directly onto the deck. The dock worker unions immediately understood that this system would erase thousands of manual loading jobs. They responded with crippling strikes. At the same time, different trucking companies, rail lines, and government regulators fiercely defended their own incompatible size requirements and pricing rules, refusing to agree on a universal standard. The shipping container was a direct attack on entrenched power structures that paralyzed global logistics. McLean bypassed the gridlock using rogue tactics. He exploited a legal loophole to operate both a shipping and a trucking company, and he used the downtime during union strikes to secretly refit his ships. In 1956, his retrofitted tanker, the Ideal X, made its maiden voyage, launching the world's first intermodal container service. But the catalyst for true global adoption arrived in the late 1960s, driven by the logistical nightmare of supplying the U.S. military in Vietnam. Facing immense supply backlogs, the military needed efficiency. McLean bypassed civilian bureaucrats entirely and sold his integrated logistics system directly to the armed forces. Then he executed a brilliant operational pivot. Instead of sailing empty ships back from Vietnam, he diverted them to Japan, loading commercial goods for the return. This route established the Trans-Pacific Trade Network, forcing the international community to adopt universal standardization, the 20 and 40-foot containers we use today. By aligning military necessity with a standardized unit, McLean successfully bypassed local labor unions and imposed a unified logistical protocol onto the entire planet. The manual labor of the mid-century dock worker was quickly replaced by port automation, starting with the Paseco quayside gantry crane in 1959. These automated cranes slashed loading times from weeks down to hours. By removing the need for manual packing, cargo damage and dockside pilfering were almost entirely eliminated. To accommodate the new infrastructure, ports worldwide had to be entirely redesigned, requiring deeper channels and massive acreage just to hold the inbound boxes. This allowed for the construction of modern megaships. A single vessel can now carry 20 times the cargo of the SS Warrior, operated by a fraction of the crew. This standardized box dictated the physical architecture of global coastlines and defined the layout of the modern port city. The resulting financial efficiency was absolute. The cost to ship a ton of goods plummeted from $420 down to less than $50. Transport costs became so negligible that modern economists often factor them into international trade equations as absolute zero. Because ocean shipping is practically free, corporations can move production across the globe to wherever labor is the cheapest. This created a phenomenon known as the death of distance. This chart illustrates the result of that shift, showing the massive volume of global container throughput by country. China leveraged its labor advantages to capture nearly a third of all global container traffic, driving the meteoric rise of Asian economies. To sustain this continuous zero-friction loop, the infrastructure must be sprawling, heavily automated, and constantly operating. The shipping container quietly redrew the map of global wealth, proving that the most revolutionary technologies are often the ones we completely ignore.
The voyage continues. Let's explore together.